Okay.
Hi everybody, welcome to our reduce, reuse, recycle, circular economy webinar for Brent Council. My name is Emma Beale, I'm the Managing Director of West London Waste Authority. Today's session is intended to be a beginner's guide, so by 7:30 this evening I very much hope that we will have given you an understanding of some of the national and international big picture context for circular economy. Explain what that means for us living our everyday lives in Brent, leaving you informed on the basics and of ongoing projects that you can get involved in. So answering questions such as what is the circular economy? How can it reduce our impact on the planet? What practical things can I be doing to repair and reuse products and to make them last? So we have an excellent lineup of speakers for you here this evening. I'll be introducing you to them in just a moment. The way the session will run is we'll listen to each of the presentations in turn, and then there'll be about 25 minutes for a question and answer session at the end. So presenters, if I could remind you, please do strictly adhere to times. That'll really help me to get as much as we can out of the questions at the end. And for those of you who are watching, you'll find that you can't take yourself off mute and you can't share your video, but if you please would use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to write down any questions at all that you'd like to ask the panelists, then I'll do my absolute best to get through all of the questions before the end of the session. That would be great, thank you. So subtitles are turned on, I believe. If you require them, you can switch these on or off according to your preference. And the webinar will be recorded and it'll be put onto Brent Council's website as a resource for residents. So just to let you know who our speakers are today, kicking us off will be Councillor Krupa Sheth to make some introductory remarks. Krupa is the lead member for the environment at Brent Council, and she'll be saying a few words about the session and about why climate emergency matters so much in Brent. We have a presentation from Susan Evans from the Green Alliance. Susan's Senior Policy Advisor. Doug Simpson is a Senior Advisor at RE London. We have a presentation from Oliver Pett from Veolia. He's the Education, Communications and Outreach Manager. He will be handing swiftly over to Motoko Doolan, also from West London Waste Authority. She is our Net Zero Carbon Manager and Joint Lead of the Circular Economy team. And a presentation from Sophia Flucker, who's a volunteer at Transition Kensal to Kilburn. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Councillor Krupa Sheth. Krupa, what would you like to talk to us about today?
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Krupa Sheth. I'm lead member for the environment at Brent Council, and I oversee Brent's climate emergency strategy. I would first like to welcome you all to this webinar and thank you all for joining. In 2019, Brent Council declared a climate and ecological emergency and pledged to do all in its gift to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. In April last year, we released a climate and ecological emergency strategy, which sets out a pathway to achieving this goal. Consumption, resource, and waste is the first of 5 key environmental themes laid out in the strategy and an area that is of huge importance to our residents. This was evident in the recommendations for actions made by the Brent Climate Assembly in 2019, which related more to consumption, resource, and waste than to any other theme. In Brent, the emissions caused by waste and resources are estimated to represent over 4 times the carbon emissions which are emitted directly from energy use in housing, building, and road transport. In order to reduce these emissions and achieve our net zero target across the borough, this will require a general shift to more sustainable behaviour, not only from Brent Council, but from all of us in Brent. In particular, there is a fundamental need for all of us to consume less of the products and materials that damage the environment and to reduce the amount of waste we produce. At Brent Council, we support the growth of the circular economy, working with both local and West London partners on creating pathways into green jobs in the local area. In April, we're excited to welcome the Green Skills Centre, which will be opening in Willesden Green. This will offer a range of green skill courses for students across London. As a local authority, we recognise our important role in leading by example through our own operations, as well as encouraging and enabling our residents to live more sustainably themselves. For many, climate change can seem like a large, complex, and overwhelming topic, and it can be difficult to know how we as individuals can make a difference. We have been putting together in the last few months a series of webinars, which we started last year, focusing on the key topics that are integral to tackling the climate and ecological emergency. We hope this webinar will shed greater light on how we can start making changes, save money, and lead a healthier lifestyle, whilst having a positive impact on the planet. I would like to thank all of our expert speakers for taking the time to deliver this webinar. If you'd like to learn more about what Brent is doing to tackle the climate emergency and how you can get involved, please join the Brent Environmental Network by signing up on our website. Thank you once again for joining, and I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Councillor Sheth. So our first presentation to follow is from Susan Evans. Susan is a Senior Policy Advisor at the Green Alliance, and she will be giving us an introduction to circular economy, how the government is working to build circular economy in England, what else is needed, and some examples of how you can get involved. So welcome, Susan. If you just give it a minute, I'm sure you will appear on our screens.
Hi, thanks for that. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. And Charlene's very kindly sharing my presentation. So let's wait for that to, if you could just put it in presentation mode, that would be great. Okay, so I'm going to start by looking at the sort of national level. So making England circular, what is a circular economy? Why do we need it? And how are we going to get there? I'm looking at England specifically because there is devolution on this policy area. So there's some differences in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland and what's happening, though there are quite a few areas where we are collaborating right across the UK on this. Charlene, if you just click on the little presentation symbol down bottom right, or otherwise just go on to the next slide. I don't mind if the notes are showing. Can we move to the next slide? I'm still seeing the first one. Thanks very much. Okay, so why do we need a circular economy? We can move straight on to the third slide. So as we just heard, our use of resources actually has enormous impacts that often don't get thought about as much as things like the energy we use. So globally, the extraction, production and processing of resources, so things like mining and intensive farming and processing and manufacturing, accounts for around half of total greenhouse gas emissions and over 90% of some other impacts like biodiversity loss and water stress. So this is obviously like an enormous area where more could be done. If you think about COP26 that just happened, resources wasn't really discussed, consumption wasn't really discussed. So it's great to hear that, council like Brent is actually specifically looking at consumption and resources alongside other environmental policies. Can we move on to the next slide? for everyone in the world to use resources at the rate like people in the UK, we would need about 2.5 planets. So clearly we're consuming at a really unsustainable rate. And if you could move to the next slide, not just the way we're consuming resources, but the way we're dealing with our waste at the end of life is also very problematic. So there'd be a few investigations recently showing how a lot of the things that we think they're recycled abroad are actually not. They're sort of dumped and treated in the wrong ways. Here we are, presentation mode. So let's flick forward to that slide. So the UK, as quite a wealthy country, is behaving quite irresponsibly and sending things like plastic waste, electronic waste, textiles, clothing waste, often to countries that are less well equipped to deal with it, and it's causing environmental problems there, social problems, and also, we're sending our carbon impacts of our waste overseas as well. So it's not really the best way of dealing with things. So really, we need to be much more responsible and thoughtful as a country in how we deal with both our consumption, our management of resources and waste. Okay, next slide. So what is a circular economy? Oh, let's get back to the blue slide. Oh, it's gone right forward. There. Oh, that's the one. Great, thank you. So at the moment, what we've had for the last while is a linear economy, as many of you are probably aware, where we dig things out the ground, we turn those things into things that people want, and then we use them, and then we chuck them away at the end of life. That's the linear economy. The recycling economy is an improvement on that, where when things get to the end of their life, you then try and find ways to bring them back into circulation for a while, but it usually is quite limited, and then it ends up eventually in landfill or incineration anyway. And a circular economy is an economy where you aspire to minimize the amount of raw materials coming into the system in the first place. Once you have products in the system, you keep them in use for as long as possible through things like designing for durability, repair, reuse. You go on to remanufacturing, and then recycling is really kind of one of the lower down options in that hierarchy. So that's what we're aspiring to. I mean, it's maybe impossible to completely eliminate the residual waste, but you try and get as close to that as possible. If you can move on to the next slide. So we've already heard about the reduce, reuse, recycle waste hierarchy earlier on. This is a slightly expanded version of how I'd see the waste hierarchy. And the bit that gets people excited in the circular economy world is really the first couple of things, the reduce, reuse, and repair. So the design phase is so important. So obviously there are things we can do as consumers, but we also want companies to be doing more to design out waste in the first place. Everyone can do more to move away from single-use products, and we can shift towards circular business models that move away from that linear approach. So things like in my local area, there's a business that started up leasing clothes instead of selling them. Then they kind of take care of those clothes and make sure they stay in use for as long as possible. And we get as much use out of that material as possible. So that's just one example. And unfortunately, at the moment in the policy world, most of the focus still is down towards the bottom of this hierarchy on the recycling, which we do need to get the recycling right. And there's more to be done, but we also want to see policy efforts moving further up this waste hierarchy. Okay, next slide. Now here's just some pictures of things that people are doing already in their sort of everyday lives. So making use of reusable items like carrier bags and coffee cups and so forth. And obviously with those, you want to keep them in use for as long as possible as well. Buying secondhand things, but there are limitations. As a consumer, for example, if you want to repair things, often things are designed so that they can't be repaired, or if they can, it's inaccessibly expensive to do that. So we do need policy interventions as well to help change those business models and make it easier for consumers to live a more sustainable lifestyle. Okay, next slide. So what are some of the benefits of a circular economy? We've calculated at Green Alliance that if we put in place a really strong sort of policy support package for the circular economy, we could create nearly 500,000 additional jobs in regions right across the UK by 2035. You can because often shifting to a circular economy means shifting towards service-based models rather than just selling things cheap and then they get chucked out soon. That can actually help to reverse the trend of offshoring jobs, because you're kind of changing the whole model of how we provide services. We retain valuable materials in the economy. So if we did better at doing, really good reuse and recycling here rather than kind of exporting stuff, that means we have valuable things available to make use of in the economy. And there's a lot of economic and social value to be added. So for example, if you compare diverting things for reuse rather than just recycling them, studies are coming out showing that you actually generate a lot more value to the local area through reuse initiatives. So that's quite an exciting development. Next slide. Sorry. So now I'll quickly run through a bit of what's been happening in the policy world. I won't go into too much detail because some of it does get a bit technical, but at a broad level, since 2018, we've had a sort of raft of documents and consultations going on. So these two documents you can see on the left here came out in 2018, got the 25-year environment plan, and we've got a waste and resources strategy for England. So some of the targets they set, by 2030, we're aiming to not send food waste to landfill. Now that's really important because food waste, when it goes to landfill, produces methane, and methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon. So everything that we can do as both as individuals and businesses and the government to prevent food waste is going to be really important, and increase the recycling in sort of industrial composting plants. By 2035, we're aiming to have 65% of our municipal waste recycled. We do not have a good track record of hitting our recycling targets, unfortunately. And as I mentioned before, we've got the dual things going on. We want to make sure we improve recycling, collection and services here in the UK, but we also want to do proper monitoring and enforcement of the rules around what is exported and what happens to that. Looking way ahead to 2050, we're aiming to have zero avoidable waste. And I think the way that's being defined at the moment is, if it can be recycled, it should be recycled as a kind of basic approach. So things shouldn't be going into incineration and landfill if you could reuse them or recycle them or remanufacture them. Also, just to mention quickly that this year there's going to be a government consultation on some legally binding targets. So that's quite exciting because at the moment we just have a legally binding target for net zero. And since that came in, it's helped to galvanize action. And even if we're not doing enough at a national level still on climate change, there are more ways to hold the government to account. And it just gives a lot more impetus behind the policy if there's a legally binding target you can hold the government to. So what you can expect to see as a result of the policy initiatives that are coming through in the next few years, we'll see hopefully fewer single-use items. So I put a question mark there because we're just focusing on plastics at the moment, and we do need to tackle plastics, but we also need to tackle single-use more broadly, because plastic is not the only problematic material. Plastic is a real problem at the end of life. When it ends up in the countryside, in the sea, we've all seen the impacts that causes. But all materials have impacts. As mentioned before, like upstream, they could be associated with things like deforestation or other things like that at the point where they're actually manufactured or the resources are extracted. So if we don't need it, if we can shift to reusable and refillable options, we should. And I'd like to see the government doing more on that. They do have powers they could use, they haven't used yet. We'll probably see more reuse hubs alongside recycling centres. I'm lucky enough to have one in my local area, and I think I've heard that there's some good stuff going on in Brent around reuse as well. So that's good.
1 minute, please, Susan.
Okay, nearly done. We're starting to see rules requiring a few more products to be repairable, though there's a long way to go on that at the moment. It's maybe repairable, but not very accessible repairs, not affordable repairs. So we need to go further on that. We'll probably see more standardization of things like packaging to make more products recyclable, and hopefully electricals as well before long. And there should be more standardized recycling collections. But the question is, how long will it all take? Because at the moment, everything's running years behind the schedule that's supposed to be at. And we want to see things like that moving beyond the focus on recycling to all the exciting things like reuse and repair that we're still not doing very much on at the moment. And this is just a quick image of something you might see in the future if we get the deposit return scheme that's been promised, where you can return your bottles, cans, that sort of thing to get your deposit back. And that would really improve the quality of recycling and retain more materials in the UK potentially. So you might start seeing those in a couple of years' time if things go to plan in your local supermarkets and so forth. So that's me done. I look forward to hearing the other presentations and answering questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. That's great. I'm going to ask you one question now, if that's all right. So John in the audience is asking, how about refuse, your waste hierarchy? Should it have refuse at the top of it?
Is that refuse or refuse?
No, I think it's refuse, not refuse. It's refuse plastic bags and refuse high carbon manufactured items.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely something that that's part of the reduce, I suppose, isn't it? It's yeah, we definitely like. I mean, one of the issues we've seen around plastic bags, we've got since we had the charge put in on plastic carrier bags, supermarkets are sort of quite cheekily providing things they're calling sort of bags for life that are actually a lot of people are using like single-use carrier bags still, or at least maybe using one a week or something. So yeah, I think as a consumer, just thinking about it yourself and turning those things down, having your own reusable things is always a good option.
Great, thank you very much. So our next speaker this evening is Doug Simpson from Re-London. Doug's a senior advisor and he's going to be providing an introduction to Re-London and the important role that they play at a regional level, helping London to make the transition that Susan's just described. And he's going to be talking about what circular economy looks like on the ground. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you to London Borough of Brent for having me along tonight. Good evening, all. I've just shared my screen, so hopefully that's come through. I'm just going to take you through a few slides on what circular economy looks like on the ground here in London. But firstly, just a bit about Re-London, the organisation that we work for. We sit between the Mayor of London and London's 33 local authorities. And our goal, or our vision, if you like, is a world without waste. And we work with local authorities and many other stakeholders to help London to transition to a low carbon circular economy. So that's things like working with local authorities, working with organisations to help them embed the circular economy into everything they do, but also on the consumer side, on the citizen side, arming them with the rights of information and tools so they can take positive action on the ground. And we have three core sort of pillars of support that we do. So we have about 250 small circular businesses that we work with to help them become more circular, or take traditional linear businesses to help them become more circular and get them accessing the supply chain and into high street shops. We work with local authorities, as I said, particularly on providing training. So I lead a piece of work on training, helping local authorities to embed the circular economy into everything they do to become more circular organisations, if you like. And the last that we have is around communications. I said communications advice and tools to promote the sort of behaviours that we're looking to adopt, or encourage people to adopt to circularity. This is one of the images. You may have seen some of the programs we did. This is one called Love Not Landfill, where we encourage people to swap clothing, swishing as it's commonly referred to, and also to donate to local charities. And it's a very empowering engagement activity at the community level. And these activities we're very highly engaged with. This one's actually taken from Camden, and we're looking to do more of these activities through other London boroughs. As Councillor Sheff and Susan said before me, really the circular economy offers huge opportunities to help us tackle climate change. And in London, this is an emissions profile for London, and very similar to what Susan was saying. Nearly half, or just under half, of the emissions associated that comes out of London is within the things that we consume, the stuff that we buy, the food that we buy, textiles, electronics. London is a huge consumer, if you like. We don't have a lot of manufacturing compared to other cities, so we have to bring in that stuff to feed ourselves, if you like, and that has an impact, as Councillor Sheff said before. The emissions that we are responsible for outside of London is at least 4 or 5 times that of what London produces itself. So we have a duty, if you like, to reduce, reuse and repair, etc., to try and reduce the impact of our consumption habits. And the other half of the emissions profile, as you would expect, is within the energy that we consume to power our homes and offices and transport as well. But it's not just about climate change and waste and recycling. The circular economy presents many opportunities to hit on some of the other priorities that other speakers have spoken about. The idea of supporting local green businesses to support our green recovery, and doing it in a very inclusive, local grassroots up approach. Getting more community cohesion out there, getting people involved in local repair and reuse schemes as a form of social prescribing, you might say. And then the typical sort of efficiency angle as well, trying to have organisations to be more efficient at the same time as being green. And then the environmental aspect, if you like, as you'd expect, the idea that we're trying to create a restorative and regenerative ecosystem, leaving it in a better place than we found it. If we can do that, we've been successful across all those other themes as well. So what does it look like on the ground? I've got the easy bit really. Susan's done the hard job of trying to explain what the circular economy is. So I've got a couple of local examples of what's happening in London, and these are activities that you can by all means get involved in. We are at Bear O'Clock, so I think it's fine to talk about Bear. This is one of our organisations called Toast. You have to excuse the spelling mistake and indicators I've just picked up. But they turn surplus breadcrumbs into beer. So the idea of taking a product that would otherwise become waste and putting it into a highly desirable product, and in doing so, we're reducing the demand for land and water and other associated emissions with making this product from virgin material. Another one, this is a London-based organisation, Olio, which you may have heard about. A food sharing app where you can share food, perfectly edible food, with your neighbours, friends and colleagues, etc., through the app. A couple of stats here from this application. Nearly 45 million portions of food shared since they've been running. Nearly just over 5.5 million users, and this last stat, a staggering nearly 6.5 billion litres of water saved through sharing food. So if you're not on Olio, get on it. It's a very simple and easy way to reduce your impact associated with your food consumption. A second one, again, you may have seen some of these around London. There are at least 5 Library of Things setups in London. This is an item rental service. So if you're like me and you use your drill about one time a year, this is the place for you. We can go on and you can rent or borrow common household items, including vacuum cleaners, drills, washing equipment. And this really sort of ingrains really good habits within the community. A couple of stats there have come out saying that since being or accessing the Library of Things, 75% people feel better connected to their community, an important aspect, particularly during COVID when people have been closed off due to the COVID pandemic. But also, I think more importantly, in terms of longevity, 6% of people are more likely to repair or recycle items, and that's fundamental. We can get back into that habit. We used to have it. I remember growing up in the 80s, we used to try and repair and reuse many items as possible, trying to get that habit back into our everyday daily lives. And just to punch out some more of those statistics from the Library of Things, this is taken from the Crystal Palace Library of Things kiosk, which has been operated in the last 2 years. Some of these numbers are staggering and really show the power of local communities collaborating together to make a dent into material reuse and materials innovation, really using things over and over again in their local area. The final case study I've got is a community space in Hackney, where this is made from recovering 80% of the materials are from the Olympic Park, recovered from the Olympic Park. And this is also adopted with a local architecture firm and using local people to build the space. And the cost, interestingly, was very similar to new build in the sense that you're getting savings on reused materials. So you have to buy new materials and having to discard them. That's offset by the extra labour and jobs created to install this building. So that's just an interesting sort of comparison on how to make sustainability affordable. And the final thing I'd like to say is that we are setting up a circular economy matchmaker. This is like a sort of a circular Amazon product whereby we're profiling a whole lot of London-based circular small businesses, and we'll expand it out later, and to allowing consumers to connect with these organisations to allow them to buy more circular and low carbon products and services. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. It's very interesting. So question from me, it's not come from the audience. Do you have an idea of how far people are willing to travel to the Library of Things? How close do they need to be? How embedded into the community does it need to be to really work?
I don't know about travel, but just looking at the numbers in the boroughs that have adopted Library of Things, they've had a lot of positive results. It's got to be easy. I think within the 15-minute city sort of concept, which is being banded around a lot, if people can get to places within 15 minutes, seems to be a general barometer that people are prepared to do or to take action. Islington have just opened up their most recent Library of Things, so that'll be interesting to see how that applies, particularly as the first one post, if you like, post the pandemic. But I think, yeah, generally for these types of activities, anything over sort of 15 or so minutes becomes a bit more problematic.
Okay, great. And do you have any examples of jobs that have been created as a result of some of the things that you've been talking about?
The one I said for Library of Things, they're creating sort of 1 or 2 jobs at least per centre. But I think more interesting, more broadly, and Susan touched on this, is that some work we did pre-pandemic showed that London could generate around about 12,500 new jobs by 2030, and most of those are in the reuse, repair, and remanufacture sectors. And I think that's massively exciting for as part of the whole sort of inclusive economy piece as well. So that just gives a bit of a scale on the London level, but I can try and find out some more information on some of those other smaller scale businesses if that's of interest to this group.
No, that's great. Thank you. It brings it to life for us. So thank you very much, Doug. Our next speaker is Oliver Pett from Veolia. Oliver is the Education, Communications and Outreach Manager, and is going to be talking very much about the role of recycling in the circular economy. Oliver, it probably won't surprise you that with Susan's presentation, with that picture from the Guardian headline of what's happening to recycling other places around the world, we've had a question about that already, and if you could include that in your presentation, that would be great. Just about what happens to the contents of recycling bins in Brent.
Sure thing. I'll do my best. Right. Bear with me. If you could let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yep, great. Perfect. Thank you. Right. So thank you. And hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Oliver Pett, and I'm from Veolia. Today, I'll just be going to talk to you about a little bit about recycling, and then also some other things that we're doing locally in Brent to sort of contribute towards the model that we're all been talking about today. Just very quickly, kind of touching on kind of what we do at Veolia. Our kind of mantra is resourcing the world, not just in waste, but also in water and energy. So in waste, for example, we actually have collection services for 40 million people in the UK. We operate around 600 treatment facilities as well. And then we're also a major supplier of water and energy treatment services in the UK as well. But in Brent, what we're actually in charge of, well, we do all of the waste and recycling collections in the borough. We help to maintain clean and healthy streets as well. We also are in charge of the grounds maintenance section of our parks and open spaces. We have my team, which is the Education, Communications and Outreach, or ECO team, to help educate the local residents. And we also have a faction that concentrates on helping at Wembley Stadium for events like the Euros last year. So just kind of quickly then, so we've kind of heard a lot already about reuse and reduction, which of course, you know, first and foremost, they need to be prioritized when it comes to waste hierarchy. You know, I think Susan put it quite well. That is really, really where we need to focus on massively. But recycling will still play a massive role in the circular economy for kind of the foreseeable future. And, you know, when we're talking about getting rid of avoidable waste by 2050, there still will be an item of that will need to be recycled. The waste industry, I believe, contributes about 35 million tons of carbon emissions per year in the UK, making it sort of about 3% or 4% of the UK greenhouse gas emissions. However, by recycling, it actually helps to save 50 billion tons of carbon emissions every year. So there's a real need for it in terms of helping us to kind of reach our net zero targets locally as well as nationally. And that's mainly from like getting things out of landfill to prevent methane and to keep things in the remanufactured system. all items like this, really. So we've got mixed glass bottles, food drink cans, clean paper and cards, all types of plastic bottles and containers, and then food and drink cartons that you'll be putting into your blue bins. And I should mention probably at this point what happens to it. It then gets taken to a materials recycling facility in Southwark, to where all of these items get separated out. They will be then sent on to reprocessors to get remanufactured into new items. I believe in Brent, it's over 50% of that is actually kept locally within the UK. There is a portion of it that goes abroad, but that is mainly in Europe, and it's very, very tightly monitored where it goes. And we were not caught up in the Turkey Guardian article that was flashed up on the screen either, so you'll be happy to see. But yes, we do certainly keep tight lids on everything that gets recycled here. But it's also important to make sure that we're not just putting everything into the recycling bin. You know, that's something called wish cycling, where we need to cut back on and just really keep it to the items that we really need to. But it's not all just about recycling in Brent's. Contrary to what I've just been talking about, you know, we do try and do other things further up the waste hierarchy as well, including, for example, we have just restarted our new skip day events. And in the past few years, this has been very, very popular, where people kind of come and get rid of their junk items. But more recently, we've managed to pull out a large amount of reuse and recycling out of these event days, 6 tons from last year alone. And we're now on track to get more than that from these events this year. We also partner with Wembley Stadium for at the end of the season, when they are getting rid of their old pitch. We have facilitated a donation of that and put it onto our local parks so that that is reused properly. We also make sure that where possible, any sort of reusable furniture items from some of our other partners can be redistributed and donated to local charities or social enterprises, such as chairs, hand sanitizers, office equipment, things like that. If you live in a house, you can also put out bags of textiles next to your recycling bin. We'll pick it up the next day for the next day after your recycling collection day, and we will make sure that that gets donated to trade to get reused or recycled as well. And at the height of the pandemic, when people couldn't leave their houses, we kind of collected nearly 5 tons of this on top of what we already were doing. And then when it comes to food waste, you may not know that if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. So that was inspiration for us enough to create our own brand new cookbook that we've called From Brent to Bowl. This is filled with 20 recipes from local community groups that are planet friendly, plus one that was donated by Nadia Khan from the Great British Bake Off. And it's also teeming with new hints and tips and guidance on how you can reuse your food waste at home and save you around £720 a year from your food waste bills as well. And you can access it completely for free online and in your local library to get a hard copy of it. Also introduced a new initiative to recycle coffee cups that we picked up from the streets, and last year we did 3,500. And then finally, when it comes to white goods recycling, things that we pick up from special collections, we were keeping separate so that they could get recycled properly. And we then extended that to our fly tip collections as well. And last year alone, we managed to divert an extra 164 tons of these electricals, one of the fastest growing waste streams in the UK. So we're really proud of that, and it's something that we're looking to do a lot more of now. So that was a very, very quick whistle-stop tour through some of the initiatives that we do here in Brent, but I'm now going to just pass it over to Motoko from West London Waste Authority, who can go into a bit more detail about the Abbey Road Reuse and Recycling Centre.
Thanks very much, Oliver. Yes, so our next speaker is Motoko Doolan. She's the Net Zero Carbon Manager and Joint Lead of Circular Economy team for West London Waste. And she's going to be talking about some of our reuse initiatives and some of the changes that you might have seen at Abbey Road. Go ahead, Motoko.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see this correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Fab. Thank you. So my name is Motoko Dulan. I'm Net Zero Carbon Manager at West London Waste. I thought it would be quite useful for us to have provide you with a more kind of practical, very much of the proper case study that's happening at the Brent. So would like to talk about a bit more about Abbey Road Recycling Centre. Before just doing that, just to explain who we are, West London Waste isn't something that you might have necessarily come across as any organisation you've heard of before, but we actually are the statutory waste disposal authority, and we serve 6 West London boroughs. So what happened is the boroughs are responsible for collecting waste from household doorsteps, but what we deal with is the actual disposal of that waste. So we serves all of these 6 boroughs collectively and deal with the waste that's being collected by your boroughs. And circular economy is actually very much at the heart of everything that we do. Our mission is very much what it is, close the loop between waste and resources. That is literally what we are trying to do, and then treat the waste as a valuable resources. So that is very much core of what we are delivering throughout everything that we do, including the treatment of the waste, but also on behalf of Brent Council, we also operate Abbey Road Recycling Centre. I'm not sure how many of you have ever visited that site, but this is where you perhaps typically used to call tip, but it's not quite like that anymore, because throughout the COVID as well, that we've been working very hard to improve the site and make much more improvement, not only in terms of how it looks, but also providing staff trainings to be able to have a better interaction with residents, and therefore the residents are more well aware of what needs to happen, and then they have a better satisfaction when they come to the site. And also the staff are also more well aware of what kind of diversion they might be able to do, because this is the last place all this waste comes together perhaps, and it's a place where we can intervene and divert as much valuable resource as much as possible. We have installed better signage on site. We even installed the wildflower meadow. It looks gorgeous in the springtime. And we are definitely increasing a number of items that we are diverting from the site. A lot of what we are trying to do in the circular economy is kind of a try and test project. And we are not really worried about, we are very much kind of excited about these opportunities that these material can give us to the local area as well. So that is the kind of focus we have on site. And I just wanted to bring up 3 key materials we very much been focusing on, and just to give you a flavor of the activity the site staff have been working very hard for the last year or 2. So the bicycles, a lot of bicycles we have received from the residents. We actually diverted over 200 bicycles for reuse and repair. Some of them are in a shape that needs a little bit of repair work, which we have actually worked with some local organizations to see who can repair. And then some of the bicycles who are in a good condition, we can just hand it over to the local charities. What we've been doing is connecting with the local schools, even the HM prisons. They actually have quite a lovely project where the resident of the prisons would be doing a lot of job skills development courses through the bicycle repair works. And then we are also connecting with a local group like Let Ride Southall, who are working to create the skill development opportunities to the local people, as well as providing bicycle as a mean of travel to those people who need the support to get a job, and so on. And we are also diverting laptops and phones. That's not only from the Abbey Road, but a couple of other recycling centres we also have at the West London, within the West London. And we have been diverting over 75 laptops. I think it's getting even higher because this data was a little bit old, but we've been correcting laptops, smartphones, also tablets for refurbishment in partnership with Hubbard. So that is also going really well. These smartphones, laptops are actually getting repaired and redistributed to the local schools, especially during the COVID, where we had some children without those devices having issues to connect to the schools. We were able to support those initiatives as well. And at the moment, we are also looking to launch at this Abbey Road site a fixing factory, where residents are able to bring their old devices or slightly broken devices and restart project, which is the organization we are working in this.
1 minute, please, Monica.
Sorry, we'll be able to provide a work experience for the young people as well as residents getting their item repaired. And the next fabulous project is the furniture that which we are working with the Pett Miracle. So they are a charitable social enterprise. They provide workshops to the people who are disabled or who are disadvantaged in the community, for them to be able to have training opportunity to gain those green job skills. We've been diverting quite a lot of furniture from the site, and so far we've delivered so many training hours that was provided to those Pett students. And we donated, these upcycled furniture actually generated a lot of funding for the organization to also keep on going and scale up. And we believe that every £1 we invested in this project, we achieved about £4.39 pence worth of social benefit, which is in social. I think this is the place I wanted to just bring back things that Susan mentioned earlier, as well as Doug mentioned. The lot of the circular economy activities that we are working on really does deliver a lot of social values. So that could be not just reducing the items from the waste, but providing more work experiences, trainings, and then also actually reducing isolations, improving mental health with those people who get involved in these activities as well. So we are seeing very positive benefits coming out of all of these circular economy projects. And we are very much looking forward to doing more of it, and would like to sort of keep everyone in the loop of all these great projects happening at the West London Waste moving forward. That was very quick.
Thank you, Mosiko. Thank you very much. So we've got quite a few questions coming in for Oliver and Mosiko relating to various sort of operational matters around circular economy. I'm going to ask a general one that sort of loops a few ideas together, and we'll see if we can come back to some of them a bit more specifically at the end. But if I sort of draw the link between people not having cars, choosing not to have cars because of the environment, or switching to electric vehicles, and that change that's required, and the need to get rid of bulky waste, but there being charges attached to bulky waste. How do we make it easier for people so that they're not having to pay charges, so that we can actually make this circular economy thing happen? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we do need to try and make it more accessible for people. We try to do it as much as possible. We're trying to work out new ways that we can make, getting rid of bulky items more accessible for people. So we do actually operate a special collection service. It is chargeable, but it's up to 5 items for about £35. So, it's not just one item. These skip days as well, we do encourage as many people as possible to come along and get rid of their items. We have 21 going on, which we're literally in the middle of. I think we've had 4 or 5 now at the moment, or possibly 6, but we've got over the next 4 or 5 weekends, we've got one pretty much every weekend. we have reuse. We do the textiles collections that I mentioned from houses as well, and we're looking to try and do a few more of those for local basis for flats as well, and possibly tying in some small waste electrical items as well to make it kind of easier for people in flats. But I do understand that it can be difficult for people to access these services, but we, that is where we need to try and push more of our resources, I think, and try and help to make these areas a bit more accessible for people. Yeah, it's just going to be something that we need to try and push together, really, to try and more access.
Thank you. Monica, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, very much kind of. We have been looking at a slightly different way of also providing the bulky waste collection for within the West London, and this is something that my colleagues are working on. So it's interesting to feed that back to them to see if, whether they are considering those options as well moving forward.
And thinking about charging at the site, are we putting people off using the site?
The charge has been in place since 2012, I believe, and it's not something that happened overnight recently. And we haven't necessarily seen changes in terms of what before and after sort of things. But we are currently looking at fly tipping issue. That's often people actually associate whether the charges have something to do with the fly tipping issues. At the moment, we haven't seen the pattern, but at the same time, we are currently looking into the fly tipping as well to see if there is anything we can do.
Okay, great. Thank you both. There's a few questions on those sorts of topics, so hopefully we'll come back in a little bit more detail in the Q&A session. So final presentation today is Sophia Flocker. She's a volunteer and is going to be talking to us about giving us some information on the background to the transition movement and introducing transition Kensal to Kilburn. So welcome, Sophia. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thanks everyone. Can you hear me and see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, just a brief presentation. Yeah, I'm a volunteer at Transition Town Kensal to Kilburn. So we're a local grassroots sustainability movement, part of the wider transition network. I think our particular transition town's been going for more than 10 years. And I think there's over 1,000 people on our mailing list and quite a few active projects, which I'm going to share with you today. So I think over the years, lots of different things have gone on. Some of them have been happening all the way through. So in no particular order, these are some of the different projects that are part of our group. Fruit harvesting, I think, was how I first got involved. So each year we pick over a ton of fruits, mostly from people's gardens. And this is where you have a glut of harvest in September, October, mostly apples and pears. And because it all comes at the same time, people find it hard to use it. So rather than letting it rot on the lawn, our volunteers go around to people's houses and pick up the fruit and make sure it gets distributed in the community. So that's a good fun project to get involved in. It was really nice to hear some of the things that we're doing also echoed in other people's presentations. The Library of Things idea is something that we've kind of talked about doing, and I'm glad to see that it looks like that's actually happening. We have a picking tool, which is what we use for harvesting. So normally we have a group of, say, 5 people. We have a tarpaulin, which we hold around the bottom of the tree, and then we have a picking tool, which is an extendable hook, basically, which you use to shake the tree, and that's how we do our harvest. But you can actually borrow these picking tools from some of the local libraries. Quite a lot of our activities are around food. So there's some local allotments in Queen's Park, for example, Kilburn Station as well. There's a growing space there. In recent years, we've also done community wine making, foraging as well. I think that's one of the photos on the right-hand side there. I think I did see someone who's part of Brent Pure Energy, so it's a community solar project which we've supported. Air pollution monitoring as well. I know Clean Air for Brent is quite an active movement, and I saw Amandine, who's also part of TTKK, is on the call. In terms of clothes repair, I don't think it's a group that's active at the moment, but in the past we've done some meetups where people can do a skill share and learn how to fix things. More recently, we did Moore's bags, which is about using scrap material to make reusable shopping bags. So trying to avoid single-use plastics in that sense. The photo on the bottom right is from the Edible High Road. So this is a project where we bought trees and put them down Queen's Park High Road. So they were out there in the summer. Each one of the shops sponsored a tree and they looked after it. And afterwards, these trees got planted in the community. We did have a local veg bag scheme, Field to Fork. I think it ran for 7 years or so. It's no longer active, but that was an interesting project to be involved in. And we've done other things such as home insulation workshops. Interesting that Restart came up, and I was aware actually of the project that's going on at Abbey Community Centre. So we've also been involved in Restart, and we're one of the active groups in London where we host Restart parties. We haven't done much during the pandemic, but we're actually just speaking to some of the venues about how to start again. So the idea of a Restart party is we put together people who know how to fix things and people who have got broken electronic devices, and we put them together, and there's again a skill share, and the idea is to help people understand better how do things work, why do they break, and yeah, hopefully understand better how to fix things, but maybe to make different choices in purchasing as well. So as I said, we've one of the more active groups in London, and just some high level stats on what we've managed to achieve. So good fun events to get involved in, but also, although we don't fix everything, we can kind of see that we do make an impact in what we're doing. Another project which ran a few years ago, some people might be aware of this one. So this was looking at old stories for new times. So this is one of our members actually got Heritage Lottery funding for this, and interviewed some more mature members of the community who lived in Brent for a long time. And I suppose the link to sustainability was getting them to think about maybe how things have changed in terms of community and the idea of make, do and mend as well. So I think they were reflecting on their lives and how things had changed living in Brent. And there was a great exhibition at Brent Museum showcasing these interviews and these memories. So a bit about how the group works. As I said, there's lots of people involved who are on our mailing list. I'm part of the core group, and the idea is that the core group isn't trying to do all of the projects, and we're very open to new ideas and new people getting involved. But we tend to take a mentoring role, so we're happy to support people with any new ideas that they have and they want to take forward. And we do also have a small amount of funding. So in the last few months, we had a competition to get people to come up with new projects which we've been supported, and you can see on the screen some of the ideas that were successful there. In terms of photos, just a few more things that we did. I think at the bottom you've got the community winemaking. Right hand side, this is Queen's Park Day, so this is from the fruit harvesters. We crush some of the apples that we harvest. An event on the top right, again, just raising awareness of transition in Kensal to Kilburn, and we did a pickling and kombucha workshop as well. So that's what the other photo is. That's all I wanted to share, really.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So a question from me. What can organisations like mine do to support this work that you're doing in the community?
I suppose what we'd like is for more people to get involved. So I think publicity is always helpful. And I think funding where it's required, but actually a lot of the projects that we're doing, they don't need a lot of funding. I think it's more about getting people engaged and getting their time. And yeah, I think the energy and the enthusiasm to get involved.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to go to the full Q&A session now. So hopefully if we could have all panelists on screen, that would be fantastic. And I'm going to ask you all some questions. I just need to make my screen a little bit bigger than it was. So starting off, one of the things that has come up in the chat hasn't sort of found its way onto our question list yet, but I'm going to take my inspiration from something that I saw in the chat about it costs more to replace a zipper than to buy a new dress. And I guess this goes for more than just textiles. This is something that is replicated across many of the materials that you're all talking about. So just sort of generally, really, a question to all of you. What can we do about this issue? Because this feels like quite a big barrier to me. Let's start with Susan.
Okay, well, as it happens, I had a meeting this afternoon with various people involved in the right to repair movement, so it's been quite topical for me today. Yeah, it's something that's happened, I guess, in the course of sort of my parents' lifetime, is that things have gone from being more economically feasible to repair stuff to actually better just to buy the new thing economically. But so one thing we've been looking at in Green Alliance is the various economic incentives around buying or repairing. And for example, we think that VAT should be cut on repair services. So that's one small thing that could make a difference. But I think alone that wouldn't be enough. You actually need, depending on which type of product we're talking about, you may also need rules that require things to be repairable as well. Something that Restart and the right to repair movement are really keen to see, for example, in electricals, is not just that things should be designed to be repairable, but the manufacturers and the brands, they have to actually commit to providing spare parts in a reasonable time frame and at an affordable cost. And that's an absolutely critical part of getting repairs to become mainstream. So yeah, there's definitely a role for policy in supporting that transition. But I suppose the other thing is just the consumer mindset. I suppose is what we can do as an individual is think about, when you're buying something, don't just think about how much does this cost as a one-off, but think about how much will this cost over the sort of lifetime. How frequently would I have to repair this? So if you can, then buying something slightly better quality that would last a bit longer, of course, is one way of trying to get around that problem.
Thank you very much. And Doug, should I bring you in on this one as well?
Yeah, sure. I think John nailed it actually before. We just refuse to accept these types of products that can't easily be repaired and recycled. Susan talked about the policy context and stronger policies to help that, but the consumer has a lot of power. I really believe that. I think if you get enough momentum of people really rallying together and campaigning, putting the pressure back on manufacturers to say, look, we're sick of this single-use throwaway economy. You need to design your products in a better way, otherwise we're just not going to buy them. I think that's something that really has to be not underestimated and take full hold of.
Thank you. If I build on that with a question from Renata about could we create more vintage markets and fairs and things so that people can take advantage of the ability to swap and sell and have more access to these sorts of reused items, basically, rather than buying new all of the time, because it feels as though it's easier and it's cheaper sometimes. So how do we make it easier for people to be buying reused in Brent? Motoko, shall I come to you on that one?
Sorry, I'm struggling to unmute.
I can hear you.
Just hold on.
Oliver, shall I come to you instead?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are West London Waste have in the past, they've got a very good and active waste prevention team that have done things like swishes and clothing swaps, things like that. And I think they've been quite well attended before in the past. I think that a few years ago, there was one that was done at Wembley Stadium, I believe. I think things like that work quite well when there's passion in the community and there is, you know, a drive for it and a market for that. So it's really encouraging to see so many active people and actually just so many attendees in general to this call, that if people think that that is something that you'd like to do, then it could be something that we try to facilitate in the upcoming year, either through Veolia and Brent or however it could be. But I think the key is to keep an eye out for these local active groups that do things like reuse workshops. Restart Party is a fantastic example of how that's done for electricals, but also things like sewing clubs. I joined one not too long ago, and I bought myself a sewing machine, and now I can repair my jeans. And so it just, you know, it's just about trying to take matters into your own hands sometimes, because you're right, zippers can be expensive. So it's if you're passionate enough about it and you're willing to look at enough Instagram tutorials, you can pretty much learn how to repair anything, is what I've learned as well. So I think the key is just to try and, if you're passionate about it, then do try and you know, reach out to the people and see if anyone else is, and you know, we can try and see what we can do to facilitate more action like that.
Great, thank you. Moscow, hopefully your background noise is resolved.
Sorry about that.
It happens to everybody.
Yeah, very much similar to Oliver in terms of, yeah, there are lots of things that you can do, but one of the things that we used to do a lot of is actually doing the events and workshop training session for our residents. Unfortunately, with the COVID, we haven't really been able to do any of that in the last 2 years or so, but it was quite popular things as well. And we actually do have quite a lot of equipment information that we can offer to the local residents if they want to do their own repair parties or events, workshop type of things, sewing kits, and even smoothie bikes. So we have quite a few things that we can lend out, and very happy to support local groups to host these events as well. So yeah, very much something that we're interested in helping out if there is any local community group that need extra help.
Great, thank you. And Sophia, there's a question here about, question from Glenys about, can retirees with suitable skills be involved to repair and to teach others to do so? What's the sort of balance of the people who join your group and who get involved? Is there any particular demographic?
Yeah, I think it's a range of people. I would probably say we've always been keen to get young people involved, sort of school age kids, just because yeah, I guess they're slightly underrepresented, and I think a lot of young people have enthusiasm around and awareness around sustainability. So I think we've always keen to have more representation from that demographic, but certainly we're really happy to have people of all ages involved.
And from what you know and from your experience, is this something that would be useful for us to be considering, how to tap into that retiree, sort of people who have skills that others haven't yet learned? I think Oliver said that he's been training himself. I think we're all probably struggling to find out what these skills are because they haven't been used for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting is that quite a few of the Restart volunteers, they don't have any professional background in repair. They're just people who've kind of picked these things up through experience, and maybe they're people who've always taken things apart and had a curiosity. So over time, the more things that you repair, the more you know about things. So certainly, I think that's great if you can share that with other people. That's part of what makes it fun and interesting.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to come to an operational question about the recycling process. How much of the recycling process is automated? Are there any plans to speed up the recycling process? Or I guess the flip side of that is there any benefit to slowing down the recycling process? Oliver, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, actually. So it is mostly automated. So when my original presentation was a bit longer and I was going into that, but I've dropped a link to a video in the comments that you can access, which actually, if you access the top video, that goes through it in a bit more detail on what actually happens. But there's a load of different processes. Because we have commingled recycling, we need to separate it all out. So it will go through a series of automated processes to pull out, separate, large cardboard from small cardboards, to magnets for steel cans, to eddy currents for aluminium cans, and things like that. But unfortunately, there is always going to be a need for some human element of it, or at least there is at the moment. And at our facility, there are 2 rooms that the material, once it goes through the initial screening, it'll go through one room where there's a picking line of humans to look through and sort of grab the materials that they don't want and put them in a vent. And then it'll go to the next load of screening, and then it will be screened again. So there's just something about the human mind that's able to find those items a bit easier for the more difficult to recycle or recognize items that the optical sorters and things like that can't pick up. And saying that the technology is improving all the time. And I believe, Susan touched on some of the new policy updates that are happening in the next few years, which are really exciting, actually, because there's a lot of pressure being put on the manufacturers of these materials to make them more recyclable, and even things that you might not even realize, like changing the color from some plastic trays from black to a different color, so that our optical readers and optical sorters in our recycling facility can actually recognize them, and it can blow a puff of air when it goes over a conveyor belt, so to make sure that it gets recycled properly and go in the right bin. So simple things like that can make massive differences. I think that it will get more streamlined in the future as well. But when you're in a commingled system of recycling, for now there will be sort of a human element needed for it. That's why it's also so important to not contaminate recycling bins, because it does end up going to a person on the other side who will sort through it. So be kind to them as well when you can.
Thank you very much. So Susan, can you tell us if our recycling systems are likely to change, do you think, as a result of some of this legislation?
Yes, there should be a fair bit more standardization of recycling systems right across England, which I think, given that people do move around quite a lot and it's quite confusing when you move from place to place and there's a whole different system, that should help with just people knowing what the rules are and sticking to them, which, as we just heard, is really important. And also, as I mentioned at the end of my talk, if the deposit return scheme goes ahead, that's a whole different way of recycling from what we've been used to. It's something that's quite common in quite a few European countries and other places around the world, like Australia. There's some schemes like that where you have to pay sort of, say, a 20p deposit on a drink you buy, for example, and then you return the bottle or can back somewhere else. And that just means that there's a lot more control over what streams of recycling are going into the system. You can kind of keep the purity levels of the recycling higher, which means that it's more valuable when it gets made back into new materials, which also helps with the problem of exporting waste, because actually, from my understanding, it's the relatively low quality waste that tends to get exported, whereas the stuff that's got higher value, there's going to be more demand for probably here in the UK. So Yep, that's some of the changes we'll probably see. And the food waste, of course, I mean, I sometimes forget because I live in Scotland. It's really common to have, we have food waste there most places, apart from some of the islands. But yeah, there'll be a lot more food waste collections, hopefully, which is brilliant for those of us who don't have composting facilities at home.
Fantastic. And I think you're leading me on to two questions, one for Sophia and one for Doug. So I'll go to Sophia first. Just but is there a link, do you think, between the work that you're doing on food and saving food before it becomes waste, and people using their food waste recycling systems?
Sorry, is there a link between avoiding waste and food waste recycling?
Yes.
I suppose it's part of awareness, isn't it? So I think if you're conscious of food waste as an issue, then you're more mindful about what you do with what you consume. So certainly, yeah, I think people want to get involved with the fruit harvesting because it's a fun thing to do. People who come on the picks get to take some of the fruit for themselves, but some people will come and they're not really doing it for themselves. They're doing it just to make sure it doesn't go to waste. So yeah, I'm sure those people are also quite careful about what they consume generally. Yeah, I think it's part of a bigger awareness picture.
Very, very wide-ranging motivations within your group, by the sounds of things.
Mm.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Doug, again, just picking up on what Susan was talking about, how do we make it easier for people who don't have cars? Because it sounds as though everything's going to get a bit more complex, more systems, getting from where we are up to 65% recycling, trying to reuse things, stop it becoming waste in the first place. What sort of things can we do to make that easier?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, especially with, as I say, people living in smaller places and not having much space to do things. I think the use of technology is key. So using those applications that allow people to share products and food more easily. And I spoke about Olio, but other platforms, there's loads on available now. Fat Llama, Gumtree, there's lots of other platforms people can use where people will come to your house and collect things. So I think these sorts of things need to be explored. But I think also the vocabulary needs to be better developed. I think it needs to move away from the sort of green message, sort of greenwashing message. I think the term vintage clothing, I think, is a fantastic one. We can get more of those sorts of terms for other products and services and get people more interested and more engaged in talking about these things. And by those conversations happening more mainstay, then people's awareness and understanding of those platforms and other means to be able to do the right thing without having, as I say, things like good access to cars or any form of transport, really. It shouldn't require that sort of access. People should be able to take sustainable behaviour very easily within their local community. So I think it's a really important part to get more of the conversations going and to adopt a really good sort of vocabulary around this.
Thank you. So Moscow, coming back to Abbey Road, we've got a question from Sheila. When will Abbey Road Recycling Centre be safely accessible for pedestrians and cyclists?
We've actually worked with the neighbouring landlord who own this land that's kind of adjoining to the Abbey Road site, and we recently installed the walkway to the site now. So there is improvement that's happening right now to make it more easier and safer for residents to come on foot. And I believe also on the booking system, you are able to book even if you are coming by bicycles as well. So we are very much considering how to make it more accessible for wider people in that context.
Great. And we would encourage people with cargo bikes and things like that, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. And also, just coming back to that question about charging, why are there charges at Abbey Road?
There are charges for the items that tends to be considered not kind of ordinary household items. So if you are bringing things that's sort of DIY waste or something like that, things that you don't tend to take with you when you move to another house, sort of thing. It tend to be it's part of the legislation change as well, that those are now considered as a chargeable materials. Hence, there are charges for a particular type of item, but not for many things. So if you are just bringing general recycling, general waste, there is no charge, but unfortunately there are charges with certain items, because there is a special way that we need to handle those. There is costs associated with handling those that is not covered by general council tax, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great, thank you. Councillor Sheth, would you like to say anything about any of the questions and answers that you've heard here so far? Can everybody hear me? Yeah, I haven't frozen. Okay, hopefully we'll get Councillor Sheth back shortly. I'd quite like to involve her in the conversation if we can. So general question for everybody. Bear with me one moment. So what would one key practical action be that you would encourage residents to take following this session? And it can be in relation to reduce, reuse or recycling, circular economy in general. I'm going to go first to Sophia.
I suppose it would be what you said, actually, do one practical action. I think there have been so many ideas shared about lots of the different things that you can do, but I think the important thing is to do something, and start with something that you can do and that's accessible to do, and maybe then you can add more things, but do something. That's what I
just do one thing.
Yeah.
What got you started?
Yeah, I think it was the fruit picking. It's a very fun activity to do. There's a wide range of ages. You get to meet people locally. It's a very simple idea, but it's very effective.
Fantastic. Oliver.
I think to make it easy for people, recycling is one of the easiest things you can do from home. So as long as you're doing that correctly, then that is a very easy way to get kind of involved. But it's a bit of a boring answer to that. I think the main thing is to try and do as much reuse as possible, and bring on yourself to try and push yourself a little bit more to learn how to reuse. And if you think there is a gap locally to learn those skills, then let's see if we can work together to try and plug that gap. I think that's a big one. And just on the note of plugging, we have our sustainability funds in Veolia that's going to be opening in the next couple of months. And so if there are initiatives, local initiatives that you'd like to be supported, then we can help to fund those as well. We've funded local community gardens and growing schemes for food, right through to sort of other initiatives that help to reuse more items more locally as well. So, if you think that there is something that, you'd love to do, then please do get in touch as well.
Okay.
Hi,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, we're struggling to unmute there. Just quickly on the comment around asphalt and paving slabs. The council have had many dialogues with residents around asphalt and paving slabs. I'm more than happy to have this conversation outside of this meeting with them if they want to have any further dialogues, but the council's position has not changed on that at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Krupa, I was asking if you had any comments on any of the questions that the panelists had been taking.
No, I was just seeing the chat over here. So I've had a
Okay.
few people direct message me, so I just thought I'd come in on that. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. So where should we go next? Let's go to Doug.
Join the OLIO Food Sharing Act. It's quick, it's cheap, it's free, it's easy, and you can have a huge impact on reducing food waste. I'd also give actually another plug for Oliver and the community fund from Veolia. My daughter's local school got money from that project, and we're doing we're doing a veg and hedge project at our local sort of green area, getting the kids, students and people involved. So that is that's a great example, I think, as well, of getting involved in your local community to reduce food waste and also to engage with your community.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. And Motoko, what would your suggestion be?
For me, it's about getting your family and friends. Also enjoy exploring those secondhand opportunities and repaired item type of thing, because it's all in good for us to try to make things, upcycle, recycled, but if there isn't demand for it, it doesn't work. So we kind of need more people actually interested in exploring that area and demanding for that sort of item. So if you can get all of your friends, family, also get excited about these things, that would be fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Susan?
I get the impression from lots of the questions that most people here are probably doing quite a bit anyway, which is fantastic. So maybe go with the kind of activism side of things. And if you've bought something and then you find out it can't be repaired, write to the company or get in contact with them on Twitter and say, like, how do I repair this? What are you going to do about it? Also write to your MP and tell them that you care about the transition to a circular economy. Tell them that you want a right to repair, or whichever issue it is you care deeply about, because we do need more impetus in government as well on this.
Thank you very much. For myself, I did two things, not that recently, actually. It was a couple of years ago, but they were sort of big changes. And one was with textiles, and I just committed never ever to put any textiles in the bin, no matter what. And it's not easy when you have kids and they grow very, very quickly. But it gets you thinking differently about textiles and where you put them. And the other one was quite a small one, but it was just plastic lids, some reusable plastic lids, and cling film has just disappeared entirely from our house. So it's a small one, but it potentially has a big impact. There's a lot of questions, not so much questions, but there's a lot of comments about the supermarkets and what the supermarkets can do. Does anybody have any comments on what we could demand of the people who produce waste in the first place to help us?
Well, we could demand that they cut the unnecessary stuff for a start. And I think something to really bear in mind is that a lot of the transition to the kind of linear economy, the wasteful economy we have now, has been brought about quite sort of deliberately. And there's so much knowledge in the big retailers. They have so much knowledge about things like consumer behavior, the psychology of buying stuff. They could apply that knowledge, to really change the systems of, how they retail and how we buy food. So I think, demanding they put that expertise and knowledge to the right purposes of cutting unnecessary packaging and finding ways to cut food waste and all the rest of it would be really crucial.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to come in on that one?
I would quite like to also see them offering more options for the consumer, that where there are alternatives item that alternative options are actually presented in front of the consumer. So we are able to make it more normalized to actually look for reusable packaging or reusable this, reusable that, rather than always just see, oh, this is the only choice we have, which is a disposal, single use type of thing. So that would be fantastic things for them to do.
Great.
And I think you see every now and again these small shops that are like refill shops on your high streets. It would be great if some of the biggest supermarkets actually were going to be a leader and actually started making refill stations where people could bring their own Tupperware and things like that to get some basics. Not everything, it's going to be a bit of a journey, but I think seeing more stuff like that in mainstream supermarkets would do leaps and bounds for changing people's mentality towards these sorts of issues.
Thank you. Any final comments? Doug, Sophia, what's your key message in a nutshell?
I guess first, you've taken a few first up. I think it's to say that empowerment. individuals and communities have more power than perhaps you know. I think just to keep tapping away, keep chipping away, and people have said before, keep writing in to manufacturers, join online forums and voice your concerns and views. Get this movement going, because with momentum, that's what's going to really shift behaviours and policy, etc. So just get active, in 2 words.
Thank you.
I'd probably say much the same, really. It's, you know, get involved. I think although we can all take small steps, I think together people do make a difference.
Absolutely, I would echo that. Sometimes feels like we can't, you know, our small bits don't save the world, but actually I think it really does if everybody is doing something. And I'm going to ask one final question before we go. Oliver, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. How do we get rid of the not yet recycled tag?
Good question. I think as someone said earlier, I think a bit of pressure on supermarkets. I think there's a lot of legislation coming in soon. There's already pressure being put onto these large companies through the extended producer responsibility policies that are going to be coming in very soon, hopefully, in the next couple of years. And that's going to mean that more items are going to be more recyclable and more accepted everywhere. So that doesn't mean that, you know, just rely on that. If there are things that you want to see changed, then do take it upon yourselves to change. You know, I think post boxes around the country were filled up a couple of years ago with crisp packets for walkers. Not saying do that, but you know, if you can get in touch with these big producers, then absolutely start putting the pressure on, because we want to make sure that packaging labels are all consistent, and that more things can be made from fewer items, and hopefully less plastic as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Really interesting and engaging debate, and went in all sorts of different directions. Really appreciate your time and the messages that you've been sending to us all today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.